Hello, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. It's me, Big Mike, and I want to welcome you to this episode of Coffee with Big Mike, the series where I sit down for a chat with some rather interesting and amazing people over a nice cup of coffee. Joining me today is Josh, the developer of Gravity Runner and the man behind Two Dog Games. Welcome, Josh, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Big Mike, and the audience. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here as well. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a bit of a weird weather day here today. Bit rainy, bit windy. So I'm having an inside day today. How about yourself?
Well, so far so good. Our rainy season is just getting started here, and so Right now it's okay, but probably by the afternoon it's going to be a washout.
Yeah, okay.
Now, have you got any gaming done lately?
I have. I've recently been playing a bit of Hades, which I hadn't played before, and I recently got Xbox Game Pass so I could play Age of Empires 4, and I saw Hades on there and was always interested in playing it, and was like, oh, I'm going to download it, and I've been playing that more than I've been playing Age of Empires 4, so bit of a interesting thing, but I'm having a lot of fun with that.
I have heard a lot of good things about Hades, but unfortunately I've never had the pleasure of checking it out.
So basically, you're like the son of Hades in the Greek mythology in the underworld, and you're basically just trying to escape the underworld to sort of make your own name out in the world. And it's sort of I guess it's what they call a roguelike or roguelite. I never know what the difference is between those two, but basically, like, the levels are procedurally sort of generated, and like all the enemies are procedurally generated, and basically you do a run every time you go through, you try and get out, and then when you die you basically just start again, but you sort of have gain more experience and sort of more sort of tools at your disposal, so each time it sort of gets a little bit easier. But yeah, it's just a lot of fun, just hacking and slashing. It can get very very heavy visuals. You're not sure what's going on sometimes when you're like right in the middle of all the hacking and slashing. But it's a lot of fun.
It sounds like it. I love procedural generated games. I've just started playing a couple myself, and I recently started playing one. And I think it's very fun, and it adds a fresh new experience, because almost every time you play it, it's a different experience. That's cool. Because doing the whole you start over again, it can get a bit repetitive. But I've found Hades has enough sort of there to, even though it's like you're doing the same thing over and over again, it's got enough sort of differences each time you do a run to sort of keep it fresh. And like the art style is pretty cool. Kind of like 2D hand drawn kind of style, but it's done from like a top down isometric kind of view, so it's kind of 3D as well. Like it's pretty cool. I would recommend checking it out, because it is a lot of fun. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Name's Josh. I recently started Two Dog Games. The start of the year, I think it's sort of like April or May, around then. And basically, I had been at my job working for a large hardware retailer here in Australia for like a long time. I was probably on like the 12 year mark, and was sort of like, the pandemic happened, and then I was like, what am I doing? I'm not really passionate about working where I was, and I had a lot of savings saved up, and I sort of just I was like, I'm gonna go for it and do what I'm passionate about, which is gaming, and decided to start learning Unreal Engine at the end of 2020, around December. I did that for like 3 or 4 months, and then around the start of April, I decided to start making Gravity Runner.
Well, I definitely think your choice paid off. Maybe a bit biased in my opinion of that, but I definitely think, and I think it's really cool that you were able to do that. Because as somebody
I was lucky to sort of have a lot of savings saved up, and I managed to get my expenses quite down. So I was like, oh look, I'm just going to go for it. Just going to do it. Give it a whirl.
When I was younger, I worked retail, and when I was in high school, first part of my university career, and that was one of my dreams. One day I'm going to walk in, I'm going to put my 2 weeks notice in, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to pursue my dream. So that's definitely... Sorry.
It's a good feeling.
Very liberating. Very, very liberating.
Yeah, very liberating.
Now, before we jump in and start talking about game development and Gravity Runner, I want to get to know Josh the Gamer, as game developers or first and foremost gamers themselves.
Yes, yeah. Well, I pretty much enjoy playing pretty much anything. I like most types of games, like first-person shooters, real-time strategy, third-person RPG. Like pretty much, I'll play anything. I like anything, as long as it's obviously good. I've recently, because I didn't really play too many indie games as a gamer before starting my sort of indie game dev journey. And I've just seen so many cool games out there that I just would not have seen if I hadn't have started going down this indie game sort of journey. Like Twitter is just full of awesome games that I hadn't heard of, hadn't seen anywhere. It's been great, sort of just trying out other indie games and just seeing just the imagination that indie games do. Because I found with like AAA games, a lot of them have just gotten so safe. They just basically every year they're just cashing in what worked the last year. So it's sort of like, it's a little stagnant, but I still play them. still play the AAAs, but it's like creativity wise, I feel like, the indie games is where it's at creatively. And I wish it had more visibility, which is great when people like yourself and other people sort of, give indie games a spotlight, because it is there's a lot of great ones out there.
I've had a very similar experience. Just recently, I would say back in August, I started going headfirst into the indie game community on Twitter. And I've had so many wonderful experiences, and I could kick myself for not knowing about this scene sooner.
I know.
And there's so many wonderful, amazing games. And if you're out there and you're listening to this, I'd highly recommend you jumping into the indie scene. You will not be disappointed. There's literally something there for everyone. And
like literally everybody. Like there's all types of games.
Now, this might be a little difficult, but what do you think has been your favorite indie game so far?
Ooh, let me think. I really liked, recently, When did it come out? I'm trying to think. It was probably a few months ago now. 2D Top D. It's it's a puzzle, mainly like a puzzle sort of game. A little bit of platforming, but it's mainly a puzzler, and basically you switch between like a 2D view for the platforming side, and then it sort of switches to like an isometric-y kind of top-down view for like the puzzle side, where you sort of move things along so that the platformer person can jump on them. Like it's pretty cool. It's got some really interesting, and some puzzles are really hard, but I was really impressed with that. The art style is really cool as well. So I'd recommend checking that out if you're into puzzle games. I think it's co-op as well. Pretty sure I haven't done it co-op. I've only done the single player, but yeah, I think it came out like August, probably. I think it's around August. But yeah, that one. And again, I saw that on Twitter, and yeah, wouldn't have known about it if it wasn't for checking out the indie game threads on Twitter. So yeah, it's really cool.
And what was the first game you've ever played?
First game, would have been, trying to think here because that was a while ago.
Oh, me too.
It would have been probably on the NES in the early 90s, and I'm thinking it was probably Mario. I'd have to say it's probably Mario. I'd think, yeah. Trying to think, but yeah, Mario would have been probably the first game, and yeah, what a game!
Absolutely phenomenal game, and it was probably my first game as well. I was my first system, or the first system I played was definitely the NES, and
yeah,
my parents had one, and they had one of those special carts that had Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt on it. So it's one.
I think that's the same one I had. I think that's the same one I had because we had the gun shooting the duck. So yeah, it was good games.
That dog though, whew, that
oh yeah,
that dog would give me some gamer rage back in the day. Ooh.
Oh yeah. A lot of those games gave gamer rage for sure. Because yeah, they were hard. Even like looking back at them now, I'm like, I think like they were like just some of the hardest games ever made. It was the old NES games.
Now, speaking of which, what do you think is the most difficult game you've ever played?
Ooh, jeez. Ooh, it's hard to say. I know, like, because I usually try to play games on the hardest difficulty, usually. But sometimes even then it's like too hard. But I remember playing God of War recently on the PlayStation on God of War difficulty and thinking, this is hard. Like even getting past the first like couple of baddies was like quite difficult. But the game itself isn't really that hard. But playing it on that setting, just for that made the combat especially hard. But then then another game, same thing, playing it on the hardest difficulty, like Xcom 2. I recently tried to play that on the hardest difficulty, and I just kept on getting my butt kicked. I just couldn't do it. It was just so hard. What about you? What's your hardest game?
I would say it would probably have to be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game.
Oh yeah,
NES.
that was brutal. That game, absolutely brutal. I don't think I ever passed it.
I didn't. The underwater part, no. I completely gave up.
Oh my god, I'm getting PSD thinking about that.
And what was really so annoying about it was that I was so into Turtle Mania at the time. You know, I was a huge fan of the Ninja Turtles, and I just know what, I can't do this. So I think that's probably the first game I rage quit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I hear. That was that game was brutal. It was absolutely brutal.
Now to shift gears a little bit, what game do you think was the most influential on you?
Ooh, again, probably going to have to say Mario. Just like it really is a sort of game that got me, excited about gaming. And then, like, obviously the SNES came out, and then it was, another Mario game, and then there was quite a few Mario games in that. The Nintendo 64 comes out, another Mario game, and they just kept on one-upping themselves. It was just like, introducing new things that sort of made you go, oh, whoa, wow, that, they're doing these things in games, sort of thing. So, yeah, it was, probably Mario as a sort of collection of games has probably, had the most influence, I'd say. And even, recently with, Mario Odyssey, it's a cool game. It's got a lot of cool stuff in it.
And I can definitely see that in your work, actually. I could definitely see it definitely has a very Mario-esque feel to it.
Oh, cool.
No, and I think you kind of touched on this at the beginning. When you were talking about getting into game development. But I just want to ask, was there ever a game that you played, and after you played it, you was like, man, I want to make games for a living?
Yeah. There's so many. so many. I mean, it's funny, sort of, you play a game, you're like, oh yeah, I want to make games. And since making games, I've sort of just like realized just how much work and effort and care has to be put in, to the games to make them, and it's just like totally lifted my respect level for game devs after playing. But like, basically, any game I play, before I was doing game dev would just like fuel my excitement for the possibility to go, oh man, I'd love to make a game, because it's such a creative medium. It's you can, and these days you can pretty much do anything with it.
And that's one of the things I find interesting about it as well. Now, I haven't published a game yet, but I do kind of dabble in it.
Oh, cool.
I do kind of dabble in it. I work with visual novels. And
oh, yeah.
And so, but it's one of the things I really do enjoy about games. If you have the right engine, you can there's really no limit to what you're capable of. Considering you put the time and effort into it. So I do find
that's it.
Yeah, so I do find it to be very liberating, and also I love seeing game developers. They take that freedom and they make something unique with it. as opposed to, sometimes, I do, don't get me wrong, I do love, big games. I do love AAA games. Like, I was a huge Nintendo fanboy for the longest time. Before I left the States, unfortunately, I had to leave my Wii behind. So after that, and so now I'm mostly a PC gamer. But I do love those big games. But sometimes they can feel a bit repetitive. And so I would say, well, not necessarily Nintendo. I think Nintendo does a great job of, giving unique experiences. But sometimes it's not like movies. You see one thing that works and it's going to make money, then other people are going to cash in or try to get a piece of that pie as well. But with indie games, I feel like it's more about expressing your vision as opposed to trying to turn a profit.
That's it. Just getting the your sort of your idea formulated, and then you spend the time fleshing it out, and you make it. And I mean, for me, like with Gravity Runner being my first title, I did not have very high expectations. Sales wise, it was more about the experience and just basically getting a game out to sort of go, yep, I can do this. I get that sort of confidence of I can do this indie game dev thing, even if I don't make a lot of money from it. I can still wake up and be happy with what I'm doing. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to make, a little extra, a little extra cash. But at this stage, it's definitely not the primary focus. It is basically just trying to do cool games and release them. That's the sort of That's the mission statement at this stage.
Well, I have to say, you're certainly off to a great start. I think Gravity Runner is you started off on the right foot. So I think, and it really shows. Actually, it really shows. But one of the things I want to ask before we get too far into that is I want to ask you, what are some of the challenges that you've had to face as a solo indie developer that maybe some of the bigger guys, like the AAA guys, or maybe even indie devs with teams don't have to face?
Well, having to learn a lot of stuff has been a challenge, that's for sure. I mean, I had a desire to do the 3D modeling and stuff myself, but the more I sort of tried to learn how to do the 3D modeling, I was like, ooh, what I'm producing currently is not up to where I would like it to be for the game. So I bought a lot of the 3D models because it was just, I was like, nah, I'm not skilled enough, and I'm happy to admit that. So I will happily pay someone else for that hard thing of 3D modeling and animating. But yeah, I mean, really, like as a sort of solo developer, you do have a lot of hats that you wear, and it gets very time consuming with things like trying to do a bit of social media marketing while also designing levels and fixing bugs and and the list goes on. So it's it would be nice to have someone to go, all right, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing this, but obviously do not have the money for that. But who knows, down the line, would be nice to spread the workload a little bit, because it is that's the hardest thing, is sort of just managing time efficiently, of, you know, trying to hit what you need to hit on those days. But yeah, I probably left like the sort of social media marketing bit too late. Like, I should have been doing that, you know, towards the start of the development stuff, getting, you know, more it out there more. But like, I was just so focused on basically getting the game, you know, working and looking how I wanted it to look, before I even, you know, thought about sort of putting it out there. But I probably should have got on the social media side of it a bit earlier. But you know, it's all learning, and I've boy, have I learned a lot.
You know, that's something I absolutely agree with. If nothing else, life is a learning experience, and
oh yeah,
absolutely, it sounds like one. And one of the things I'm learning myself on this project I'm working on as a YouTuber, VTuber, is just juggling all these roles, or being a jack of all trades but a master of none.
Yeah.
So,
I hear that.
And I would say, marketing is probably not my best suit so far, but I will say networking goes a long way. Networking will go a long way, and I would say, just, you know, if you ever get the opportunity, you know, just put yourself out there, you know, and meet people, and just and you know, especially in the indie game dev community, those people are
it's
some
great.
of the nicest people you will ever meet. And you know, oftentimes I see somebody, oh, can you help me with this? I don't know anything about that, but my friend Bob knows about this. Let me connect you with Bob. And so I think it's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's great. It really is. I was a bit, you know, because I didn't really do much social media stuff before I started doing game dev. And I was like, oh, you know, like Twitter, they're probably going to be like brutal. But no, it was like nothing but support on Twitter. Like, yeah, really just fantastic people.
I know it's a lot of hard work to develop a game, and you know I've never published a game yet, but I have done quite a bit. But also I know there's a certain sense of satisfaction that comes from having something from the very conception to completion, and that thing being your own blood, sweat, and tears put into it. So, if you had the opportunity, with this in mind, to start all over again, would you have a team to help you if you could, or would you choose to still solo it?
I would probably still choose to solo it. I don't know, like, you know, it is super hard, but there is just something about doing it, you know, by yourself. I mean, like, it is hard. Like, I say I do it by myself, but I still, like, you know, have friends that I ask opinions of, and you know, like friends and family. So, like, you know, even though you're doing it solo, I mean, I'm lucky to have like a pretty good support system around me, of where they're, you know, pretty honest with their feedback, and generally, like, with the feedback, you know, try and be helpful behind it, not just like, oh, this sucks, and then like give nothing else, like going, oh, look, I don't think that really works. I think maybe if you try this, and then you're like, oh, you know, I can see that, and sort of go from there. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think a team would be nice, but I think there's something about doing it, you know, solo, where you've got that just absolute control over all aspects of the game, which is, you know, it's a double-edged sword, where you've got that control, but you've also got all that responsibility, and, you know, it's up to you. So, you know, it's good and it's bad.
I completely understand. You know, sometimes I think, you know, I wish I had a team to help me. Like, I wish I had an editor. I wish I had a secretary. You know, stuff like that. But I'll be honest with you, when I lay down at night, just completely exhausted from everything, you know, there's a certain sense of satisfaction that comes with that. I'm like, man, you know what? I know I gave everything today. I pushed myself. I got a lot of things done. And there's a cool sense of that. And it actually reminds me back to my younger days when I used to play football in high school. I would come home after practice feeling that same way. And it's really, nothing really beats that for me.
No, for sure.
Though I will say, if first chance I get to get an editor, I'm definitely getting an editor, I would say.
No, fair enough. Editing, like, because, I did all the, video sort of promos and stuff for Gravity Runner, and editing is, it's a lot of work. It is so much work.
Absolutely, very time consuming too. Like,
so time consuming.
Now I want to shift focus now to a Gravity Runner. The star of the show, the meat and potatoes.
For sure.
What was the inspiration for Gravity Runner?
Gravity Runner has evolved from its original concept. It originally, premise-wise, it was the sort of same thing where you're running from a black hole. Essentially, I originally had it planned as like a endless runner, and you're just constantly running from a black hole, and that was it. And obstacles would pop up, and it was sort of like on a sort of top-down isometric kind of view sort of thing. And as I started doing the prototype, I found, and I wanted gravity to be the main theme of the game, and I wanted to have you going upside down and sideways and stuff like that. And during the prototyping phase, I was like, this sort of top-down isometric thing, it just doesn't really work too well with the whole upside-down gravity thing. So I sort of tried third-person camera, and that was working better. And then I was like, endless runner, I kind of feel like this game should be more of like a platformer, still have a runner aspect, but be a little bit more platformy and have levels to sort of mix things up a bit. And then when I was doing that, I was like, what art direction am I going to use for this sort of thing? And I was thinking sci-fi, and then I was just endless scrolling throughout the internet, and then I sort of came across some pictures of the old 80s retro synthwave look, and I was like, that is a pretty cool look, and I don't think I've really seen it used on this sort of game before. So I sort of started testing it out, and was like, this actually works really well. Really well. And then I was like, because originally I was like, I have a main character that's like a robot or something. And then I was like, black holes, space, sci-fi. And I saw some pictures of, in the 80s retro sort of thing with, astronauts in these old orange sort of suits and stuff. And I was like, that's the main character. I want to have an astronaut. And, the game sort of just took on a life of its own. Once I got that sort of art style in, it sort of, really sort of made the game. And then I found some awesome synthwave music that just absolutely completed the game. It was bit of a evolutionary process for Gravity Runner, and it definitely changed a bit from the original concept of I want to do like a gravity themed endless runner from a top down isometric kind of view to what it is now. But I think it ended up better than I had obviously originally envisaged. So I'm pretty proud of how it turned out.
To be honest, if when I play this game, it doesn't feel like that this is somebody's first game. It honestly,
Yeah, okay, thank you.
honestly, it doesn't. In fact, one of the things I wanted to do when doing my research for my video showcase in Gravity Run, as well as this interview, I was looking through your catalog and see, what else has he done before this. And I'm like, oh wow, this is his first game. So it was a really simple surprise because it's a really great game, really fantastic. And I do agree.
Oh, thank you.
I think the aesthetics is probably one of the most unique selling points of the game.
It definitely, makes it sort of a bit unique and sort of stands out. It's a cool style. Classic 80s retro synthwavey look.
The first thing I thought when I saw that, have you ever seen, they're a bit old now, but have you seen the memes done in the 80s style? It's like the same look, the same exact look.
Okay.
And but it's like the font, like usually like to say something like "yikes," or something like that. But that's just like the first thing I thought about. And I was like, oh wow, that's pretty awesome. Now, another thing about this game, and you touched on this as well, is the music, and it's one of the most praised aspects of the game. And
yeah, it's cool.
I'm going to completely butcher this name, I'm sure, but Alan Dal Castagni did a superb job composing it, and it has even been said that the price of the game is well worth it for the music alone. So how did you go about finding it? Finding the right music, and how did you know? That was
basically, I was on the Unreal Marketplace and was like, oh, I wonder if there's any, sort of music packs here with synthwave sort of music, already done that I can use, and sort of looking, then sort of listen to the first track that's on this pack that Alan did, and was like, oh man, this is awesome. And then I was like, oh, what about the second track? And then I was like, all right, yeah, this is it. So I bought it, and then because licensing from the Unreal Marketplace is basically you can use it for anything to do with the game. Like it's fine to use for the game. But I was like, oh, I better just double check with Alan that I can use it for promotional stuff as well, for in the trailers. In little promo vids and things like that. So I got in touch with Alan, and he was like, it's all covered. Anything game related, promo wise, it's all good. So and just great music. So I try and give praise to Alan whenever it comes up, because it really made the game. The music, in my opinion, like the looks are all cool, and the levels, but like the music it sort of takes it up that next sort of notch.
I do have to say the sound and the visuals both go together really well. Like,
oh yeah,
it's just like this. Like in my review. In my video, I say they form the perfect 1-2 punch combination to kind of make this game a knockout.
Oh yeah,
and I think that's one of the things I really enjoy about it. Now, while on the subject of music, can I ask, have you ever played any of the F-Zero games?
Oh yeah, F-Zero X back in the day was quite the quite the staple. Got a lot of action. I haven't played too many of it since then though, but a lot of fun.
And the reason why I bring it up is because sometimes, some points in the music, I kind of get F-Zero vibes when I hear it, and I'm not sure if it's just me, because I tend to be a bit weird sometimes.
Well, it might be some inspiration there that Alan had when he was doing the music. I'm not sure, but yeah, that classic old school sound. It's man, that's a good game, Mr. X.
And And can I ask, how did you choose how did you choose this engine to work with? So, or another way I could ask this, why this engine? Why not something like Unity, for example?
So I had tried Unity for a very long time. This is where I like committed to doing game dev, where I was just sort of like, trying it out sort of thing. And it was fine. It was, good. It seemed like a lot of the power came from getting, plugins and stuff like that. And when I was getting sort of serious about doing game dev again, I was like, I wanna sort of have a look at other engines, and then Unreal just kept on coming up, and when I was first looking at Unity, I didn't really even look at Unreal because at that time the royalty stuff was a little bit more sort of, it was, I think after you made like $10,000, you had to do royalties, and I was like, oh, that sort of like put me off a little bit. But now it's like something ridiculous, like $1 million, over $1 million, you start paying royalties. So I was like, well, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So should be all good with that. And then as I started looking at Unreal, I was like, wow, you can do a lot of stuff in it. And and it's all sort of built in. It's built into the engine. So I sort of was like, oh, I want to give it a go. And so I had every intention of learning C++. I mean, like I know a bit. I used to do a bit of web development and a little bit of other multimedia development back in the day, like quite a while ago now, like 15 years ago. So I was like, I'm okay, like relearning it would be fine to relearn coding, but Unreal has their blueprint system, which is, it's all basically visual scripting, all node based, and I was like, oh, is it going to be powerful enough to sort of do, what I want to do? And the more I looked into it, I was like, you can almost do everything with the blueprint system. So I was like, I'll give it a go and see. And it just, I was really surprised with the blueprint system, just what you can do with it, and how quick it made everything. Like to debugging things, it's a lot easier to sort of see where things are going wrong. It's a lot easier to sort of hook up, because you're literally just dragging nodes to other nodes and doing stuff to sort of get things working, instead of typing out a bunch of code or copy and pasting a bunch of code. So yeah, and then also doing like the cinematics and stuff. Unreal's got a really powerful sort of sequence editor in it. So yeah, it ticked all the boxes really. And after I learned it, because it's pretty daunting when you do open up Unreal, there's a lot there, but once you sort of get the basics down, it's sort of, everything sort of falls into place, and you can navigate pretty easy. So I'm quite happy with Unreal. It was quite easy to work with. I will say though, in my experience, it did crash a lot. So I did save constantly. So that was the only thing, is it crashed a lot. But apart from that, experience is fine.
Now, for me, Gravity Runner is very simple in regards to both gameplay and controls.
Yeah.
And I think that makes the game much more accessible. And couple this with the fact that the objective is to get a high score. And I am reminded of those great games of the past, like Galaga, Donkey Kong, or Super Mario Bros.
Yeah.
Was this something you were going for, or is this a coincidence?
No, I wanted to keep it as simple as possible in terms of what the player sort of did. I just wanted it to be basically you ran and you jumped. That was always the plan. The sort of high score thing kind of evolved. Originally, it was going to be distance based. That was when it was, which it's still sort of like a high score anyway. That was when it was more of a runner. But then I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to make it more like an arcade game, have it score based, that sort of thing. But the premise was always to be as simple. Like Gravity Runner is like, it's a very simple game to learn, but it is hard to master because it can get, even I have spots sometimes where I'm like, oh my god, this is too hard.
And is there a certain part of Gravity Runner that you find the most difficult?
So probably I don't know. I'll just give it like a general sense that basically the hardest parts I find is when basically you've gotten to a section where you've basically done a misstep and you've fallen off one of the platforms, or you've just missed the platform or something, and some of the obstacles have crashed into other platforms, which then have sent other platforms spinning into other platforms. So it all gets a bit chaotic, and just trying to like navigate through some of those spots are very difficult, because like sometimes you can, if you're sort of patient enough, you can hit the timings right to still make it through, but sometimes you can't. Also, if the black hole is really close, you're probably going to start panicking before you can sort of make it through. But yeah, just that sort of general sense of when the physics goes a bit crazy and knocks other platforms, out of where they should be, is probably the hardest sort of spots to get past.
I agree with that. For me, that's probably one of the most difficult parts of the game. And though I think it fits rather nicely with the theme, with everything that's going on in the game, because a black hole chasing you mere meters behind you. I can imagine gravity is going to be going pretty crazy. The physics going to be warped. But in my experience playing, I have had some really cool experiences dealing with that situation. Like the most memorable one, and I still to this day don't know how this happened. But most of the big platforms, the ones that are more safe, they're kind of thin, but they're big. Well, it had turned on its side because of the gravity going crazy, and somehow or another, I was able to perfectly land on that thin little side and complete. And I was like, "Man, this shouldn't have happened," but we're making it.
I'll take it. Yeah. No, it does. Moments like that are pretty funny. And I don't know if people have found this out yet or not, but like in some circumstances you can basically stand on a platform, like if the rest of the air is a bit sort of tricky, if you stand on a platform long enough it'll like sink down, and if you stay on it, basically it'll get to a spot where it rides the gravity shoots it back up, so you can sort of stay on it to essentially get more height to try and like get further past some of the sections. So like a little pro tip there, if you do get sort of stuck and you're on a platform, you can't quite sort of see how to get across, if you sort of let the platform fall down and stay on it, it'll ride back up and you can get a bit more height to hopefully get past the tricky section.
I am definitely going to have to keep that one in mind. I am definitely going to have to. And maybe this is a good point to ask this right here. One thing I've noticed, because I've been playing Gravity Runner, since the demo that was released in, I think, September.
Yeah, I think it's about, man.
And one thing I've noticed between the demo and the final game, maybe it's just me being weird again, but it just seems like the first two levels in the final game feel not as difficult as they did in the demo. And
yeah,
so,
correct.
I see. There we go.
yeah. I toned it down a little bit after some feedback on the demo. Made it just a little bit more accessible on those sort of first two levels. At the third level, I tweaked some things, but it's still probably about the same as it was in the demo. I did scale the difficulty a little bit down in the full game after a bit of feedback.
Now, speaking of the levels, many of the levels, if not all, have a unique design to them. Mm-hmm. And in one level, there's palm trees, and another level you're in the middle of a urban cityscape, or futuristic urban cityscape, and then the next one, and another one, there's this huge Death Star-esque, thing in the background. And was there anything in particular that inspired these designs?
Well, I was just sort of going with a sci-fi sort of look, and B, the synthwave sort of look, and just combining, like the palm trees and the cars is very much the synthwave look with the, the 80s, 80s retro vibe sort of thing. And then the city stuff, it's more of like a, sort of futuristic synthwave look. And then, like, the Death Star thing, I was just having a bit of fun with that. That was kind of like a homage to Star Wars, But, basically just a sci-fi vibe and a synthwave vibe was what I was trying to keep throughout the levels. So,
do you have a favorite level? I like I don't know if you've played them yet. They're the bonus levels in the main game. But there's 2D levels, where basically the gravity is a bit different in those levels, where the player, the gravity, you kind of stick to the objects. So if you're like on a sphere and you run forward, well, you'll just keep on going round and round and round on the sphere, and you can do some pretty fun things on those levels. I quite enjoy just playing on those levels, just sort of like having fun, just going upside down and then jumping to other platforms, and then going onto another sphere and turning the right side up and then flicking around, just sort of like doing like a gymnastics sort of course, That does sound really fun. Unfortunately, I haven't made it quite that far yet. I'm still stuck on level 3. I'm still trying to pass.
No, they're pretty difficult. It was one of those things where, like, I wanted the game to be challenging, but I didn't want it to like totally put people off. And it's a hard line to walk, because like some levels I think I achieved it pretty well, and then there's other levels where I'm like, oh, I think I made that too hard. So it's sort of like. Because a lot of people, they enjoy the game and have fun, but they're like, oh boy, it invokes a lot of rage.
I will admit I have had some gamer rage playing.
Some
gamer rage playing. I've said some things that I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say if I was recording.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I will say, it's a game that has me coming back time and time again. I've been playing this since September, and one of the really cool things I like about it is that there are multiple pathways sometimes for a stage. And some of those pathways I'll find, I'm not even thinking about what I'm doing. It's just almost automatic. And then there's some pathways I take, I'm thinking of my next move like it's a game of chess. And I think that variety is kind of what keeps me coming back, as well as that simple gameplay philosophy.
No, I mean, like, throughout development, I was, just constantly playing the levels over and over and over and over and over again. Like hundreds of hours, that's just at a minimum. honing these levels to, just try and balance spots and, make sure platforms aren't too far apart, and the list goes on and on. But like throughout that time, I was, I never stopped. I never got frustrated with playing the game in a sense of playing the game. I get frustrated trying to get past the levels I had built, but like not the actual game of playing it. Like I still like. I mean, I've spent hundreds of hours playing Gravity Runner, and I still enjoy picking it up and just having a run, jumping stuff, and getting close to the black hole, and the time's slow, and the music, change pitch and field of view widen, and just sort of like start jumping in slow mo. Like it's just I mean, I still have fun, which is good.
And you mentioned so many things just now that I really enjoy about this game.
Oh yeah,
and when I look at your game, I notice a lot of really cool things, like the designs of the worlds, the skies, and as you just said, even the way the gameplay and music are affected when the black hole gets close.
Yeah.
This shows me that you pay a lot of attention to detail, which in turn tells me that you as a developer put a lot of effort and thought into your work. And so that's what I can learn from looking at this. But I want to ask, from its conception to its publication, did you learn anything about yourself while working on this game?
Good question. I learned that I learned that I can do this. I can do game dev, because you sort of start these things where you're like, oh yes, everything's gonna go fine. Everything's gonna work out. I mean, there was some days I would spend like 3 or 4 days trying to fix like one bug, and completely get my soul crushed every time it didn't work, and you're sort of going, why doesn't this work? You're trying to like trace your sort of logic, going, this should work, and then after like 3 or 4 days of trying to find this thing, you sort of you just go, oh wait a sec, what's this here? And then you're like, you fix that, and then it's working, and you're like, wow, 4 days, and it was literally like a 2-minute fix, like. So there was days like that where I was really questioning my myself and my sanity. But I think it has sort of cemented my problem solving skills of like just I can find paths through things, in the sense of like, if this isn't working, I can either fix it or cut it. And I found myself more often than not fixing things than cutting things, which I don't know is like stupid or not. But like I had an idea of what I wanted to be, and I wanted it to work a certain way. I mean, that's not to say I didn't make changes and cut stuff, but essentially what Gravity Runner is now is what I wanted it to be. So, I've learned I can, if I'm persistent enough, I can finish an idea, if that makes sense.
I completely understand that. I completely understand. If when you're up against something, if you have to, you put forth the time and the effort and the dedication, you can see it all the way through. And also, I think, just talking to you, I think maybe you really enjoy problem solving as well. You love a good challenge.
Yeah, I do. I love a good challenge. And it was quite funny during like the height of my developing Gravity Runner. I didn't really play any games because like the feeling I get from playing games, like I was getting that hit from like solving these problems I was having with Gravity Runner, like just doing all those steps in itself was like playing a game for me. An incredibly frustrating and infuriating game, but still at the end of it, like just this great sense of satisfaction, So, so yeah, no, I didn't. I'm trying to catch up a bit now on playing games because I really I did not play that much while I was developing because it was just like I didn't really have the energy because I spent it all making this, but I didn't also have that sort of that need to game because I was getting what I needed from making Gravity Runner with the problems and just doing that. So yeah, that was it was interesting.
And since you got back into gaming after completing Gravity Runner, how do you view gaming now? Do you view it differently?
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I have a lot more respect, that's for sure. I also have a lot more empathy, sympathy. I don't know what you want to say for like when I encounter bugs, because I know how easy they are to just pop up. Because all it takes is for you to sort of overlook one thing and not take something into account, and it'll pop up. So I'm a bit more forgiving when I when I encounter bugs in games because I now know precisely how easy it is for them to pop up. So yeah, no, it's definitely changed my view on gaming in general. That's for sure.
And what does the future look like for Two Doll Games? Are there any projects you want to work on?
Yeah, so I've started sort of working out an idea for another game now. I haven't gotten very far. All I know is I want this one to be a little bit more story focused, maybe like a adventure, go on an adventure sort of thing. I haven't really worked out any mechanics and stuff that I want to have in the game or even what sort of game I want to make yet, but I know I want to have a little bit more of a story and go take the player on an adventure. So it'll definitely be a bit more involved than Gravity Runner for sure.
Now, if there's somebody out there and they're looking to get into developing their first game, what advice could you offer them?
I would say, just do it. Just take the leap. Even if your first game you just start off small. I would say you're never gonna know if you can do something until you try to do it. So I mean, even if you try and you fail, at least you know, and you have that experience to either find something else or commit even harder to it. It's, I mean, it's not easy. I will say that with great confidence. It is not an easy path, but it is very rewarding to have people play a game and enjoy a game. It's no other feeling like it. Really, it's very, very humbling. But yeah, my advice would be to just do it. Don't talk about doing it. Just do it. Just give it a go. And who knows? You might change your life.
And that's a piece of advice I love to give people whenever they ask me about anything from game development to VTubing, other content creation. Just go for it. Just jump in head first. You have no idea what you're capable of. And one of the things I've learned about humanity, having been on both sides of the Pacific, having been talking to people from all over the world, is that as a species, we are so resilient and we are capable of so much more than we even can realize ourselves. And so we just don't know until we try. And maybe this isn't something for you, or maybe it is for you, but you just have to push a bit harder. But the only way you'll know is to actually get out there and try.
That's it.
Now, let's say, for example, as a person who has never knowingly played an indie game, maybe they don't think anything indie is good. Whether it be indie movies, indie music, indie games, etc. Or maybe it's somebody like who I was a couple years ago. They simply don't know indie games exist. What's one thing you would like them to know?
That they can offer, whether it is indie games or indie movies or indie whatever, it can offer a different perspective, a different narrative to what you see that is constantly pushed in front of you by big businesses. So just be open to opening your eyes and seeing. There's a whole other world of entertainment out there that has just as much it's probably got more love put into it, because indie games, a lot of it isn't about making money, it's just about making a great game. Same with indie movies, I'm sure. It's all about telling a story. So yeah, just check them out. Check it out.
No, and I agree with that 100%. When it comes to indie games, like literally anything is possible. You can have an indie game done in a retro style. Like, for example, it can look like something that you played in the 80s. Like, let's say Dig Dug, for example. Or you can also have something that's cutting edge. Like something like, I would say, Gravity Runner or Exo in the Starlight. Graphically superior to a lot of things. And so I would say, don't discount something just because it's something that's not talked about a lot. You may just surprise yourself what you'll find.
Yeah, totally.
And one last question I want to ask you while on the subject of indie games. What's the Australian indie game scene like?
Well, I know it's pretty big over in, because I'm in Western Australia, and there's not much happening in my neck of the woods, but Melbourne and Brisbane and the Gold Coast have quite a few indie game developers over there, and there is they do have conferences and stuff like that. Obviously, it's been a bit hard organising anything with COVID, but with everything, we're starting to open back up in Australia now, so hopefully can start sort of networking a bit more in the Australian sort of side of it, because so far it's been a bit lonely here. Western Australia. There's not too much going on. The indie scene that I've seen. I mean, I might be wrong. They're so hard to find. That's the thing. Is the indie side of everything is just, it's so hard to find the communities, because they're they're like more often than not hidden away. Hidden gems. So I'd like to find some more West Australian indie game developers, because I have not found any that I can see online yet. So hopefully they're out there.
Yeah, unfortunately, my knowledge of indie games from Australia is very limited. It's so limited. Yeah. In fact, I only know two, both being very good, by the way. Gravity Runner and Untitled Goose Game.
Oh yes, the Goose Game.
I absolutely love that game. It's one of my favorites, and it's one of the things that it's one of the indie games that I didn't realize was an indie game, and so I started looking into indie games. And I started realizing, wow, there's so many games here that are indie that have been massive hits, like, Untitled Goose Game, Doki Doki Literature Club, and way back in the day, Slender, the 8 Pages. All viral hits and all indie games. So, but I will say that while my knowledge of Australian indie games is very limited, it is, so far, what I've encountered has been nothing but gold.
Nice.
And so that's going to be it for my questions. Now, do you have any questions or anything that you'd like to ask?
Oh, well, what have you, but sort of like gameplay wise, do you have like specific genres that you enjoy playing, or are you sort of like me where you play everything, or do you have a specific sort of type of game that you enjoy playing?
Well, that's been an interesting journey for me. Now, most of my life I preferred platformers, beat 'em ups, kart racers, RPGs, and visual novels. But since I've jumped into the indie game scene, I've expanded my horizons a bit. So I'm much more willing to give anything a chance. But those are my favorite genres.
Yeah. Wow, I mean, they're good genres. They got a lot of cool games in them.
And recently, I started playing some point-and-click games. And there's this really excellent indie game coming out in 2022 called Brock the Investigator. And it mixes beat 'em up with point-and-click. And you play as this alligator who's an investigator, and he's trying to solve this huge mystery, and along the way you have to fight people like similar to maybe Bare Knuckle or River City Ransom, if you ever played that. So it's really good. It's a really interesting experience, but it was my first time playing a point-and-click game, and so I'm a bit interested in that genre now as well.
Well, there's a few of them around as well, and they're pretty good. Like Monkey Island. I don't know if you're familiar with that franchise, like the Curse of Monkey. It was like back in the day, but that's point and click adventure games. Good stories. But this is like, when did that come out? Like early 90s or mid 90s or something. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure they're available still somewhere. But there's like a whole series of Monkey Island games, which like a fun point and click adventure.
I think in this digital world now with stuff like Steam, I think I'm surprised that more games like that aren't being recycled per se or made available again.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Like I see Sega, for example. I see Sega jumping on and re-releasing a lot of their older titles, on Steam. And so I feel like it would be a great way. It would be a great way for, game developers to really, make available some of those older titles from yesteryear that are really great. Though there are some sites out there. That are kind of like the Netflix of gaming. And in my very first video, it hasn't came out yet, but by the time this is out, it'll have been out. I cover this really cool site called Antstream. And Antstream is a British site. It's kind of like the Netflix of gaming, or what's that called? There was a really great music site as well, similar to Netflix. The name escapes me, but anyway, it's like Netflix but gaming, and so it offers a lot of classic games from the early '90s to '80s. Games from Commodore 64.
Oh wow!
Older computer games, some point-and-click games, some text-based games, as well as pinball tables. And so there are some sites out there like that as well. And the really cool thing about this is that you can pay a $10 fee, or about $10 depending on the exchange rate between the pound and the dollar. But there's also a free option that's essentially everything you get for paying. And so it's something if you're really into older games, I really suggest checking out. Though I will say that some of the titles on there are really old. I started gaming with the NES, and even my parents loved visiting arcades because they were teenagers in the 80s. And so I belong to some arcades as well. But there's still a lot of games there that I'm like, oh wow, what's this? I've never heard of this before.
So many. And
so that's just a great resource if anybody's out there looking for something older to play. And in the future, I'm hoping to actually cover some more older games like it as well.
Cool.
But I just want to say it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. It's been...
Oh, you too. It's been great.
And thank you so much for joining us today, Josh.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you so very much for all the support you've given me, man. Like, you have been... the indie game community as a whole has been supportive to me. And you have been one of my bigger supporters as well upon that.
It's my pleasure.
And I want to apologize if I seem a bit absent lately, because I'm getting this whole project off the ground, and it seems like 24 hours aren't enough time.
I haven't been on social media that much lately either. I've been taking a little break because it was pretty heavy, to follow up to the release and a bit after release. So I was like, no, I'm just gonna take a break for a bit, so I haven't been on there that much either.
All right. Well, it's certainly been a pleasure. And if you have any time in the future, like when you get to work on your new project and you want to come back on, or just you want to come on and chill and have a nice conversation again, please let me know. I would love to have you back on again.
Cool. Yeah, no, it sounds good.
Thank you so much, Josh, for all of your support and for joining us today. All right, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, thank you so much for joining us as well. Be sure to check out Gravity Runner at the link below. And if you can't buy it but would still like to support Josh, be sure to wishlist it. Wishlisting games are a great way to support indie developers. Also, special thanks to Fran, who does a wonderful job doing my art. A special thanks to all of my friends on Twitter. I wouldn't be here without you all. And most importantly, a special thank you to all of you for watching. Please like this video if you liked it, dislike it if you dislike it. Feel free to comment below and let me know what you think. And if you like my content, please subscribe and turn your notifications on. Until next time, fam, peace out.